This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 1922, The True Cost of Commuting, Part 2, by Mr. Money Mustache of MrMoneyMustache.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. Today's post is actually a continuation from yesterday. So if you're new here, it'd be best to listen to yesterday's episode first. But if you're all caught up, let's hear part 2 and continue optimizing your life. The True Cost of Commuting, Part 2, by Mr. Money Mustache of MrMoneyMustache.com. Despite the availability of options, the idea of living close to work still seems to be completely alien to most people I've met. While I would personally consider it far more important than even the salary or the work performed, most people put commute distance below house price, perceived school quality, and neighborhood preference. With such a low threshold placed on commuting, most people don't even put a reasonable effort into creating a nice local lifestyle for themselves. As you saw with the couple in my example, they were willing to go from their existing super easy commute to an insane asylum 80-minute round trip just because they like the scenic and neighborly vibe of my neighborhood. Schools are often used as an excuse as well. But until you've reviewed every close-to-work school personally and interviewed the principal, you might be making quite a bad trade-off for your kids. What's better, higher standardized test scores and more rich kids, or real-world diversity and an extra 2 hours to spend with mom and dad every day reading books? And how about an extra $300,000 or so towards the college fund that you didn't burn up in cars and gas during her school career? To put things back on par, let's whip up a couple of quick commuting equations. Let's assume the average person's marginal driving cost is halfway between the ultra Mustachian driver figure of 17 cents per mile and Uncle Sam's generous 51-cent allowance, so 34 cents. Let's also assume the value of a person's time is $25 per hour, since this is close to a median wage for a suburban commuter. If you don't think you'd use your newfound leisure time that productively, you need to think more like an early retiree. I used mine for plenty of learning and domestic insourcing. For each mile you drive across 2 times on your round trip to work daily, it multiplies to 500 miles per year, or a $170 annual fee. For each of these miles, you waste about 6 minutes in the round trip, adding to 25 hours per year or $625 of your time. So each mile you live from work steals $795 per year from you in commuting costs. $795 per year will pay the interest on $15,900 of house borrowed at a 5% interest rate. In other words, a logical person should be willing to pay about $15,900 more for a house that is 1 mile closer to work and $477,000 more for a house that is 30 miles closer to work. For a double commuting couple, these numbers are $31,800 and $954,000. Adapting the numbers for a $7.50 minimum wage worker, each mile of car commuting cuts $1.43 from your workday. If you drive 10 miles to go work a 5-hour shift at the Outback Steakhouse, your effective hourly wage is more like $5 per hour after subtracting car costs and adding drive time. And these are all numbers for the United States, where cars and gasoline are much, much cheaper than they are in almost any other country. In Canada, you can add 30% to the gas prices and 50% to car prices. In the UK, still more. If these numbers sound ridiculous, it's because they are. It's ridiculous to commute by car to work if you realize how expensive it is to drive, and if you value your time at anything close to what you get paid. I did these calculations long before getting my first job, and because of them, I have never been willing to live anywhere that required me to drive myself to work. It's just too expensive, and there's always another option when choosing a job and a house if you make it a priority. And making that easy choice is probably the biggest single boost that will get the average person from poverty to financial independence over a reasonable period of time. I would say that biking more and driving less was the trigger in my own life that started a chain reactions of savings and happy lifestyle changes that led my wife and I to retirement in our early 30s. Now, all this doesn't mean you have to set up a tent on your employer's front lawn to avoid going broke. Public transit, although an afterthought in most of the US, is great if it's available to you because you get your brain and your hands back for the purpose of getting some of your day's work done while en route. But if you can walk or bike to work, it will cost you virtually nothing and also doesn't count as using up your personal time because it's adding something that nobody except Olympic athletes are doing enough of anyway: exercise. You can take your time spent riding your bike directly out of time you would have otherwise spent in the gym or waiting in the doctor's office for prescription medication. So there's my answer for this potential new set of neighbors. I'll see you in 10 years. And now that the truth has at last been revealed about the foolishness of commuting, I'm looking forward to reading about the empty interstates and bicycle-filled streets tomorrow morning. You just listened to part 2 of the post titled The True Cost of Commuting by Mr. Money Mustache of MrMoneyMustache.com. I believe this article was written quite a while ago, as I suspect Mr. Money Mustache had no idea how the pandemic would further influence our relationship with our work commute. Many more people have the option to work from home now, as we've proven to the powers that be over the last couple of years that it can be done. Data scientists at Ladders project that 25% of all professional jobs in North America will be remote by the end of 2022. And remote opportunities will continue to increase through 2023. This is very good news when it comes to the cost of commuting to work, and I've personally enjoyed this savings since I started working from home in 2017. Without a work commute, many of us will be able to enjoy our economical vehicles even longer. For example, I bought my 2010 Mazda 3 for $6,000 cash back in 2018. At the time, it had about 80,000 miles on it. I just looked out of curiosity, and in over 4 years, I've only put about 30,000 miles on this car, and the maintenance has been minimal. I suspect I have many more years of cheap car ownership ahead of me, and I have work from home to thank for that. I'm sure we can all agree that gas prices have been pretty crazy recently, which is another benefit to cutting down on your commute. While I've been cringing at the pump, the reality is that I fill my tank maybe once per month for the minimal driving I do. That's another episode of Optimal Finance Daily in the books. I'll be back with a bonus episode in a minute, so I'll see you there where your optimal life awaits.